Hey, 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 Laura J. and Sarah Jane, both Hamiltons, on a call about permaculture, sustainable living, and the cultural roots of identity farming. So it's going to be an interesting call, and we are going deeper as well into sharing information about how you can get involved in some live events after this. So make sure to plug in for this call. Obviously, everyone here already is, and we're grateful for you. Speaking more to those who are listening to the review in this call on YouTube there. And Sarah Jane, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to be co-facilitating this experience together. How are you tonight?
Likewise, I'm wonderful. Thank you. It's an honor to be here and to be speaking about really important subjects. So I'm really grateful for all of you for coming. Yeah, we're going to be covering fundamental principles that are interconnected in all aspects of our life. So it's such a beautiful and important time to be alive and aware, to have these awarenesses for taking responsibility for regenerative practices. So thank you, Laura. It's beautiful.
My pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about permaculture and sustainable living because my pursuits in the academic or intellectual realm have been that theory that kind of disconnected from what's real that I've been working to bring down. And I was actually speaking to a friend, Thunder, who had mentioned permaculture before I knew about the expo. And he was talking about how permaculture is the longest standing expression of, sorry, the longest standing expression of um, cats coming in. No, he it was the about how culture, the foundations and the frameworks of culture, and how permaculture is actually doing the things that we're required to now do in terms of rebuilding and clearing the clutter and debris and distractions that come across the screen out of the screen of our mind to be able to get aligned to now.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. Beautifully
Hey.
said.
Well, thank you for the inspiration, Maximus James.
Wow, beautiful cat. Yeah, and I find just to touch or expand on um, we it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have. Like some people will already have quite a vast knowledge about permaculture and farming and working with the land. But one of the principles that you is just like witnessing and deeply listening. So watching systems and how they grow and how they develop. Very it can be very internal, right? We use that, just like you were saying, a way to witness our own minds and how there can be a lot of noise and clutter. So when we kind of slow down and watch how things grow and interact with each other, that's when we start um, to learn. You know, the elements, nature is the greatest teacher that we have. It's the great mother, however you want to call her. It's there in front of us for us to learn as children of the earth. So it's an honor to be able to give back, you know, because we're always receiving so much from the soil. And it's at a time now where to start taking responsibility to as beings. You know, we're not separate from nature. We are beings of the earth, and just like a pig, you know, goes down and gets the fruit to get the seed to plant it somewhere else, we have our responsibilities. So it's such a beautiful to lifestyle to touch on. My experience is I've always been very passionate about regeneration and sustainability. I used to be a land steward on a homestead where I spent quite a few years just really diving into permaculture systems. And I've learned a lot, but I'm still learning so much. So um, that's one thing that we're really blessed is the upcoming Tiny Home Expo. There's amazing facilitators who will be speaking more in depth to what we're going to talk about today. So that,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
if anyone isn't aware of that, you can find it on soulspath.ca under the Sustainable Living Tiny Home Expo there. So all the details for this excellent event, April 20th to 21st, 10 to 5 both days, where we've got lots going on, including a lineup that Sarah Jane is going to get into. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and let you actually share the PowerPoint presentation that you've got. I just wanted to make sure people knew to go to soulspath.ca in order to see the venue, to see the details for the expo.
yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So, yeah, why we're here today, we're talking about the pillars of regenerative responsibility and the origins of cultural roots of IV farming. So, um, start with a quote, and I know, Laura, you're going to speak a bit more to this, but just to kind of set the intention and the energy for today, um, I love this quote by Philip Dick, and it's objective reality is a synthetic construct dealing with a hypothetical universalization of subjective realities. What a mouthful. So just take a moment to let that sink in. And I know that, Laura, you had a few things you wanted to share.
Yeah, this quote that you chose is befitting the whole quest to find the real roots of our story, where the story of Rome comes in from the tale that I've been piecing together, because of how the patterns underlying problems are generally the same. It's just the framework that then is built up with the pain. And that's the synthetic construct. So even if you look at the universal sign of alchemy with the circle in the center representing us and our essence, and then the square outside of that, which is kind of like the mind and the box that we find ourselves in, that is then circled with a triangle that is outside of that square, because that's the prism of the prison that our mind focuses and looks at life through the lens of, with then a larger circle outside of that, which is the all that all of us are really part of, until the box of our mind and the way that we look at things, which is the triangle, then starts to make us believe ourselves to be less than we are and also more than we are. And those elements of how we find our value in this world and how we perceive our value to be measured with those that we're in relationship or dynamics with is very much compounded by this multi spectrum experience of one thing that has multiple parts, as all of us do. And even the cultural roots of identity farming, when we start to actually look at what identity is, there's an entity in the ID that we then see ourselves to be. But is it really what we are in truth? Or is it just an aspect that then we're made to believe ourselves to be at the expense of all that we truly are? So when we actually think about the wars and the conflict that we enter into because we believe different things, which are actually just the ideologies that are filling in the frameworks of the paradigms or the patterns that actually give that weight, or is the bones for the meat, so to speak. When we start to see culture in that way, then it's a different perspective because no longer do we trust what we've received from those that thought they knew best. Until then, finding that maybe what we've been told wasn't so true, in that there are counterfeit versions of all things. And that takes us into a prism system of our own minds that make us stay up there instead of in our hearts, where we're actually in alignment with the now. And if we're in a time construct, that's not now, generally speaking, because now is all there is. Time is that construct, time and space being how then we think we find our place. But the truth is that when we're in the now, when we're in the moment, that's when we come home to the truth of who and whose we are, without needing to put the creator of all into a specific box necessarily that makes us believe ourselves to be different from someone else who puts a different title or name on that which we all came from. And so if we actually take that in and what that means, it creates that cognitive dissonance of two competing realities, then the familiar existing family that like things as they are, and then this new baby idea that may come into a household that doesn't want the inconvenience of having to then accept something new and out there and foreign. And so that then brings in the whole notion of foreign and what that means. And it's for rain, if you break down the words in a creative way like what I do. What does rain mean but to pull the reins on that which has claimed us, because we gave our power to that which we then identified with, which was a construct. And when we actually go back to the roots of the whole lineage of ideologies that our culture has been existing based off of, that's when we start to see that maybe there were some lies embedded in the origin story that we've been buying. Until then, we start collectively coming together and saying, well, what does it mean to be natural? And what does it mean to come back to nature? And how do all of these thoughts that keep us in our head and out of our heart actually help us in moving forward, or finding ways to mend those relationships that got compromised or damaged because we thought we were talking about different things when it was just the terms we put on the patterns underneath that were the same, we just couldn't see it because the names changed. So that's just a piece that I wanted to share. I was going to say, um, there in where the frameworks are concerned, um, in the olden model, in the days of Rome, you had a liege lord at top, which is kind of like your head honcho and your top dog. And under the liege lord, you have the lords, who are the second in charge. So they have access to the top. And under the lords, there were vassals. And vassals were the holders of title, which were actually often the farmers, which is part of the reason that topic came in. And I wasn't going to go here just because it's so mental in many ways that it just keeps us up here instead of in the heart. But at the same time, I do think it may be relevant for where we're going and what we're getting out of, to better understand the holders of title had access to the land and then could command the serfs, villeins, and fiefs, who were the ones identified by the land that they worked on, or the fiefs, which sound like thieves, which is also just another expression of the land. And then the villeins being the upper class of the low class, who then became villains in someone's life if a vassal lord or liege lord said they didn't pay, go hurt them. And so then the villain, who is disenfranchised but just working for the man, goes to hurt the man that couldn't pay. And that was how the villain became the villain in someone's life. And it kind of goes back to what's happening now culturally, where we're hurting ourselves when we hurt one another because we're told to do something that goes against our conscience, which we only do if we're removed from our heart because we're in our head following an order instead of actually being present to say, I think this is going to cost me more than it's worth to me to actually do. So that would be my contribution, just in terms of understanding that hierarchy of the liege lord, lord, vassals, and then the fiefs, villeins, and serfs at the bottom as the peasants.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes.
Speaking that, that's really it's profound, right? It's profound to think that sometimes what we know to be true is um, can be very conditioned, right? And then we're at that place, and like you said, not necessarily in the heart. So it's very interesting to look at, like, the roots of how far back that goes, and how, like, culture, society has just like expanded on that. And then, like this quote, it's like it's creating an objective reality. But the beautiful thing is that I'm going to go to the next slide, is that more and more people are waking up to that, right? They're oh, one second here. We can see, yeah, we can see that it's not quite that way anymore, and that we're starting to unlearn all of these programs that we've been brought. So thank you for sharing that, Laura.
My pleasure.
So, and to go further, this is why permaculture is so beautiful. Um, is why we are here. So we are at a space in time where the citizens of the earth, all of us, are waking up to something bigger than we have, than what they have been conditioned to feel and know as objective reality. Exactly like we were just saying. We are starting to understand as a collective that we are not here, and that we have a great responsibility as stewards of the earth to connect with what our service is to the whole. We have gone through this massive healing and cleansing, and we still are. You don't just become healed. We're working on ourselves constantly. There comes a point where we connect with what our is, and that's when we have to start to go beyond our scope and show up for our communities, show up for Earth, show up for our families, as little and as big as it may look or may feel. It's just so important that we're operating from that place of all, and only you as an individual, only I will know what that is for me, and you for you. So permaculture and sustainability stand at the forefront to guide us into more intentional practices that are aligned with the natural laws of nature. So I'm going to touch a bit more on the natural laws of nature. And we're going to speak to the principles of sustainability, permaculture, regenerative practices, regenerative responsibility, and the natural laws. And then we can see how they mirror each other and how interconnected it all is with the inner work and the outer work. So that's why you might hear people saying permaculture is life, right? Because it's so much more than just working with the land. And that's so now we're just going to focus on the foundation, the principles, and then and then it's up to us to start to explore where we want to go with that. So many amazing people who can speak to all of these areas. So what is permaculture? Permaculture is a design approach and philosophy that seeks to create sustainable and self-sufficient human habitats by modeling systems found in nature. So these two amazing gentlemen from Australia, and David Holmgren, never say that right. They are seen as like the founders of permaculture, and they have so many incredible books. if you want to take a screenshot of their names, please do, so you can look up a lot of the resources. Taking culture and the farming and yeah, how does nature work? How does nature work? How do we support it? Because as humans, um, you know, if you go to a forest, let's say, you see a forest that's been left, um, there's not a lot of intervention in terms of like harvesting wood or anything. And you look at that, and then you look at another forest that's been maybe the fallen wood has been sustainably harvested, and there's a bit of human manicuring, not a lot, excessive, but you'll see how one system is thriving more than the other, and that's where it's important to understand your value as a human and your contribution as a species that's a part of nature, because we are meant to help things thrive and experience their fullest expression, just like you are meant to experience your fullest expression. So permaculture really this ideology, of how we can support nature and it can flourish for everyone. Because I know there's a lot of like the shadow or the ego side where it's like humans, we just destroy nature and like just leave it alone. It's like, no, actually not separate from it. So it's important for me, it's important to understand that. The three key ethics of permaculture. So care for the earth, recognizing the importance of preserving and restoring ecological systems and biodiversity. Care for people, so promoting social equity, justice, and well-being within human communities. Fair share or return of surplus. So ensuring that resources are distributed equitably and that surplus is shared fairly among people and reinvested back into the earth and the community. So completing the cycle is very important. And it's kind of like that leave no trace, where it's like everything goes back into a system that supports itself. So it's constantly moving and expanding. So in addition to these ethics, permaculture is guided by a set of design principles derived from observing natural patterns and processes. So just to touch on a few of them, observation. And so one that I really like with this is if you have some knowledge of permaculture, you might have heard of the edge. There's a lot of talk where two systems come and they meet. And one could be very different from the other, right? And the edge is like the what happens when these two meet. There's like a very unique kind of atmosphere that's created that's unique to those, coming together. And I was thinking about this analogy, how, we have like, I'll use politics as an example. It's always a hot topic. So you have maybe like one party, they believe in this party, they start to identify with, that atmosphere. So there's this big divide, right? There can be this really big divide. But what happens when we bridge those two together? What bridges us? It's usually love, is usually the baseline for opposing ideologies or opinions, is connecting at a different level that's not necessarily has anything to do with it. So it's like creating this unique relationship. So I like to use that as an example because the edge is really important. So you see a lot of times in monoculture where you have another field, and there's usually trees in the middle, right? Because that acts as like a bridge for the wind, and to protect the crops. So that's not a natural edge, but if you go to, let's say, a pond and you have a forest, what is the ecosystem at when they come together, and how much life comes from that? and is birthed from that. So that's one of my favorite observations of permaculture within these principles. So we have catch and store energy. So this could be something like, rainwater, or utilize the rain and have it flowing into, maybe you have a rain garden. I know a lot of homesteads who are running their whole farms on just rainwater, which is amazing. And then you have obtain a yield, apply self-regulation, and accept feedback. Yeah, this can be a hard one. You put a lot of something. And now maybe we'll go to more like gardening terms. So I remember creating this amazing spiral garden. I had all these systems, and a lot of the things didn't work out. And I had to be okay with accepting the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, and it was a learning experience. So that is one of the most important principles for sure, and for in everyday life. Yeah. So we have use and value renewable resources and services, produce no waste, so completing the cycle, use small and slow solutions, use and value diversity, design from patterns to details rather than segregate. So that's like also where they're talking about the edge, and other, and we can expand. If anyone's interested, I'm happy to expand on any of these, but just we want to be mindful of the time. So I'm going to head to the next. So what is regenerative responsibility? So regenerative responsibility, and I want to make this clear that this is kind of a term that I've not coined, but I like it because it's where I'm at right now in my life, where I know that it's time to be in service to the earth and people, to my community, because we have this responsibility. We don't come here we come here to experience, of course. Everyone's going to have a different perspective on this, but we also have very unique gifts that are meant to be shared. So what would happen if an apple tree never shared its apples? Like, we have to share them. Delicious. So principles and practices aimed at restoring, revitalizing, and enhancing ecosystems and communities. So we have holistic thinking. So that's regenerative responsibility, involves considering the interconnected social, ecological, and economic systems. This holistic perspective recognizes that actions in one area can have ripple effects across various systems. So yeah, understanding the interconnectedness of all things, and it's like thoughts or actions, how it affects others and other systems as well, the growth. Stewardship. Stewardship entails caring for and responsibly managing resources, and including natural, cultural, and social assets for the benefit of present and future generations. It involves a sense of guardianship and accountability. So when we live on the land or at your home, you have a responsibility caring for that home. And we all know that love helps things flourish. So, and it's the reciprocity. When we give, we receive. So the stewardship is very important. Well, they're all very important. But so we have resilience, regenerative response emphasizes building resilience in ecosystems and communities to adapt and thrive in the face of challenges, including climate change, which everyone might have a different perspective on, social disruptions, and economic shocks. So yeah, having those action plans, like even if you're living in community, we're humans, there's always going to be challenges. So how do we create templates or structures for navigating those, and how do we move through them with resiliency? So diversity and inclusion, and regenerative practices, so which would encompass a range of techniques aimed at restoring and enhancing natural and social systems. So regenerative agriculture, permaculture. Um, and then we have adaptive management, equity and justice. So promoting equity and justice is fundamental. It involves addressing systematic inequality, ensuring that benefits and burdens are distributed fairly among all members of society, including marginalized communities. So that's a whole other area you could explore. And I know, Laura, you speak to that sometimes, or I've heard you speak to that. Um, Very important. Of long-term thinking. So I don't know if you've heard of the 7 generation rule, where it's, how's that going to affect the 7 generations from now? So taking responsibility for our actions, and and that comes down to not just physical, but also, um, what we're creating. Children know that firsthand, right? We are gifted what our ancestors have gone through, and we're transmuting all that energy. So the responsibility definitely runs deep there. Um, and yeah, so that's the long-term thinking. And how do we integrate? So um, I would love to, if anyone has any questions as well, like please feel free to write in the chat, or if you have something that you want to share that's like, oh, that really spoke to me, please do share. Because it can feel like a lot of information sometimes, but what I really want to say is how, you know, these systems just, they start to help us have this awareness to look at ourselves and look at how we're operating and how we're honoring, firstly ourselves, and how does that interact with the atmosphere, or the atmosphere that we're creating around us. um, and I want to share that sometimes it can feel like a lot. It can feel like I'm only one person. Like the world has a lot of problems happening right now, and I don't know what to do. And it can really feel overwhelming. That's why I don't watch the news anymore. But there was a point in my life where I'm like, okay, that's too much. But we all know the news has a whole other level of, so. Um, but I can't. So my take action and how I integrate all this is, how can I show up on a daily basis that that creates a ripple effect of good? How can I embody my values, and how can I help people do the same? We all have very unique gifts, all of us, and it's not up to one person to save the world. But we're at a time where is the soil health is declining at a rapid rate. There's been estimates that within 60 years we won't be able to grow food. That's an estimate. I'm not true, but this is why permaculture and regenerative practices, sustainability is at the forefront, because we see that it's working. People have gone to places where it's like desert, and they've brought life back through these systems. So it's possible. The future looks very hopeful, because we are starting to focus, and we are starting to look at the conditioning, and how do we have conversations with people who have worked their whole lives, maybe as a traditional, I don't want to say traditional, but as a farmer, perhaps, that's, being, like Laura was saying, have to answer to companies who are giving them the money, right? So there's a certain agenda that they have to follow, and then they become reliant on that system. And it's hard to grow things, right? Hard to grow things when you're using like Roundup, or because you have invasive weeds and plants that come in, and they start to evolve and grow resilient to these chemicals. So, how do we have conversations with people who have poured their lives into this work, um, and come from a place of empathy and compassion, and help them shift? Help them see that there's actually a really important and better way to support the soil, which then supports us tenfold. So these are all really great questions, and I have. Okay, I'll just read this out loud. So, how do non-landowners, say urban renters, integrate permaculture into their homes? So there's a whole movement of people, urban gardeners, and I'm not sure, Meg, um, like how much space you have to grow, or but there's a lot of people who are doing urban forest gardens as well. So there's like movements of like food food not lawns, I think that's what it's called. So there's different ways that we can like you can still rainwater. Like there's some great examples. I'd be happy to share it with you actually. But if you look up urban gardening, and lawns, I think it's food forests, not lawns. But there's some great examples of people who, there's a guy producing enough food. He has like a market garden, like his tiny little lot in town. He's turned his whole thing into a food forest, which is amazing because then you have people walking by, and it's like they always put like some like bushes on the street where the people can actually eat and pick berries too. So there's ways to really inspire people, and you can also maybe look at your home and use the permaculture to say, okay, you know, what am I reliant on? For example, water is you're usually on town water, I guess, when you're living in an urban setting, but collecting the rainwater and then giving that to your plants. Just seeing how much you can complete, um, or well, you could use a simple one like when we make like kombucha or something, and it's like using the vinegar for cleaning, or like how can we create all these systems that feed into each other? And there's a whole process, right? Like permaculture is not just like do it overnight. You have to spend time really watching them, being deeply present with how your environment interacts with each other, and how you interact with your environment, and how the elements show up. So there's a lot of great resources, and there's one, if you look up like templates, and I'll send you one as well, that basically you just start first, you start by watching, and then you do like a land survey of your home and the outside areas and the topography. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly what what the what the layout of your place is, but starting there is a great point, because then you can start to look at like create how you can creatively close the gaps and have like a loop.
Oh yeah, totally. Um, I'm thinking also like, so where I live now, I have 2 acres, and we basically do have some sort of ability to permaculture the land. And like another sub question is be like, what if people who don't have the land? And I mean, it's very easy to like create your own compost in your kitchen, or collect rainwater, and then they have like community gardens in which you could create that permaculture. Then so like, what if you want to do permaculture but you don't have the land, kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're renting, so you can't really I guess that's my concern, is like, if I move from here, how can I continue to grow my garden
Mm-hmm.
and to sustain myself in a place that like won't let me use their lawn as a garden?
Right, like for renters, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're renting. That's a great question. I mean, it'll be unique to like wherever you end up for sure. But that's why like the community element is really important, right? So like there's more and more people who are banding together and creating like that community garden, like you were saying. There's other levels too. Like if you're just wanting to grow, like it's difficult, right? It is a difficult thing when people don't have their own land because um or like if they're renting a room in a house, for example. Like in London, I was always in just a little room. That's all I could ever afford at the time. And I had my container, my pots on the window. Wherever I could catch some sunlight, there was plants there. So I found that really helped. But I think like in the case of like smaller spaces where they're not your own, it's kind of going out in the community and seeing how you can help and create systems together with like-minded people, because that's how it grows even bigger, and you create it's like exponential growth, right? Because it's like a movement. We want to really encourage people um, to start thinking about these things. And maybe one day you can say to like, hey, look, like this person's making like 10 grand a month on his lawn. Like, why not? Or like we have to start to get creative and also band together, because it's important to have support from people who you're on the same page with, or who you share interests with. I think that's really important, because it's a lot to feel like you have to do it all on your own. And sometimes we're not in that position. So when we can zoom out and go more on a larger scale with connecting with community, these kind of projects, that's when I find like the magic happens, because we're really wanting to raise awareness and help, the future of our soil, and food safety important too, right? So I think, yeah, I mean, I pray that you'll be in a space that will allow you to do that, and power of the mind, call it in. It's I find like setting the values and the vision helps too, right? If you're really looking for a space, just have that in your vision, imagine yourself there, and it can happen very quickly.
Yeah, so true. Like where I lived before, I had my garden in my parking spot. So instead of a vehicle, I had big, huge pots that I would grow vegetables out of and flowers. And like I had this beautiful little green space, even though we had a big yard, but I wasn't allowed to garden in it. Um, and so at the time I was looking into proposing like to the municipality, like if we can use a portion of the city park. So I know that you can, like, if you get a group of people together and go to your local, ask them, say, we want to start a garden with this many lots and this many area in this public park, that could sometimes, once it's approved by everybody else, go ahead with. But yeah, it takes more than just, a few people to maintain that. And I got like blessed in the next opportunity where I moved to have 2 acres, right, to garden on and stuff. And so even when I moved here, I like brought my pots with me, my pots of plants, and so we're just trying to expand here a little bit more this year, which is really exciting. Like I have watermelons and sweet peppers and hot peppers and tomatoes like growing in the kitchen right now with like grow lights and getting ready. But I'm also like thinking of how to continue that growing throughout the season. So into the winter, and we're going to be creating like a sort of greenhouse that will allow us to grow winter greens and winter vegetables. Yeah, like how do we continue to get some other stuff? So like avocado and big
Love
dreams, right? Bathhouse with tropical plants in it.
that. Wow.
But then I create all of this, and so I feel like, okay, well now I'm stuck at this place. Like not stuck, but how do I create that in other places? Like if I move from here, like that is one thing that I would have to sacrifice. But like you're just mentioning, to put it out in the universe that the next place I move to will have more land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe that.
That's important for you. Like you can make it happen for sure.
Yeah.
It's like setting those boundaries of like, but no, I won't settle for that. And then the universe knows, it's like, okay, she wants this. Well, that's beautiful. It sounds like you're doing a lot of amazing.
Yeah, like one thing that I'm going to be creating is like smaller pots to give to people that have everything that they can grow in a salsa. So like a tomato plant, a pepper plant, basil, cilantro, onion, like all in one pot, so that they can have this, yeah, miniature garden in their home, right? And it earlier in this meeting, I was thinking about how gardening for ourselves was very popular back in the olden days, as they say, and then we started large consume farming, and so we've forgotten like our rootal ancestral thing of growing our own food. So now it's become like this taboo thing, or weird to grow your own food, kind of. But it's that shift and that change of going back to those roots. Um, I'm really happy to be at the beginning of it and not the end of it. So
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's like the land is calling us home, right?
yeah,
And we can connect in so many different ways. Because I have a lot of friends who live in the city, and they feel like they don't, and I forget sometimes. I forget, oh, like my reality is green, like, forest, and I'm very fortunate. So those are all really good points. And it sounds like, yeah, you have pots wherever you go, and you make it work. Um,
yeah. Like when I look for places, I'm like, okay, will I be able to garden there?
well, it's important, and that's actually a good segue to go into um, the next slide, which is the Sustainable Living and Tiny Home Expo. So I'll just speak a bit about that. So there are so many amazing facilitators who will be coming to share. We have, and I'll talk about it a bit more, but they can depth about these, like about solutions for urban gardening, and how can we make a difference when you know and learn more. So there's if you all have the 20th and 21st, I highly recommend coming for the whole weekend because it's going to be an incredible opportunity, and we really want to have a space where we can have all these really important discussions, um, and start thinking of solutions. And the more that we share, the more it grows and it ripples outwards. So it's like the power of that intention. So um, just a little bit about what's happening is we have an Earth Day parade on the Saturday, which is going to be amazing. Um, and we have, I'll touch more about it because I want to share more. But tiny home tours, artisan vendors, incredible workshops, kids activities. So there's lots of different activities for the kids. I getting them involved in just the regular workshops too, for those that feel fitting, of course. We have ceremonies on both days. We have panel discussions. So some of the panel discussions will be like, how do we come together and buy land? And, if you want to have a dwelling on it, like, what does that mean with the municipality in an organized township? Because there's a lot of people that will go north and live on unorganized townships. So it's very different. Amazing people who have a lot of experience that will be on these, doing the workshops and the panel discussions and touring the tiny home. And then there's a cold plunge ceremony happening on both days. We have group, we have weekend camping. There's yoga for the weekend pass holders in the morning. Artisan food vendors. It's like a mini festival around sustainability and like small living, and yeah, just like helping Mama Gaia. It'll be beautiful. So, and just the Earth Day parade. On the left, the picture on the left is the Zeus mobile, and it's like a magical tall bike with drums and whistles and bells. And we're really encouraging everyone to dress up, bring some instruments. We're just going to really celebrate Earth and all the children. And it's going to be really beautiful and magical, because we need to celebrate. That's how we, grow and make amazing change, is celebration. So that's happening at noon on the Saturday. on the 20th. And a beautiful sister, she's a priestess. Her name is Anuveda. She will be leading procession down to the sacred fire, and there's going to be an honoring of the children. So she's doing a fire ceremony, oration, a prayer celebration for all the children, and it's a very special, intentional opportunity to just honor the next generation, just really and gift them this like beautiful experience. So, um, and then we have Earth Day ceremony that spoke to that, tours and seminars. I just want to be mindful of the time. So I'm just going to speed up a little bit. But we have, these are the workshops. These will be on the website days. But a few of the workshops I want to speak to is we have the Living Center. If you're not familiar with the Living Center, this is their property here on the left. And it's a permaculture haven outside of London, Ontario, and they've been operating out of there for 30 to 40 years. Chantry and Lorena. So they're going to be coming and offering 3 different workshops on rooted wisdom, a deep ecology paradigm for eco-evolution, the soul of permaculture, practices in inner and social harmony. We have another amazing couple who have built a cob home, and they're dealing with municipality, and they live completely off grid, and they are also practicing permaculture for quite a long time. And that's Bryce and Misty from Ontario Permaculture, German New Medicine with Jordy Lishman, Health, Sustainability, Preparedness Coaching with Nancy Metcalf. And I can keep going down the list, but we have foraging workshops, we have some panel discussions, like I mentioned, steps to empowerment through storytelling with Laura J. Hamilton. And then we have, building inspired unity and community. So there's a lot of you that aren't listed here as well. So just like the depths we're going to go into this weekend, I pray you can all come. It's going to be magical. An accommodation, so camping's included in that weekend, and then we have you can upgrade to like cabins or glamping tents or the lodge. We have some spaces still available as well. If you live close, just get a weekend pass and come on both days, whichever you feel. And if you need to take a screenshot or just go on the website, everything's there. But a single day pass is only $22, and a weekend pass is $55. So we just want to create this space for people to come and learn and get inspired, and connect with community, because it's going to be fantastic. So that is the presentation for the Tiny Home Expo. I wanted to share this with you from Chief Arvil Looking Horse, from the Lakota tribe in South Dakota. So each and every one of us needs to do our part. Each of us is put here in this time and this place to personally decide the future of humankind. Did you think the Creator would create unnecessary evil in a time of such terrible danger? Know that you yourself are essential to this world. Understand both the blessing and the burden of that. You yourself are desperately needed to save the soul of this world. Did you think you were put here for something less? In a sacred hoop of life, there is no beginning and no end.
How beautiful.
Yes. So check out that website, because there's a call to action on June 21st. And I just really recommend just exploring more of this call to action. But yes, I'm excited, and thank you all so much for taking the time to tune into that.
Yay!
Sharing here.
Thank you so much.
That was spectacular, Sarah Jane. Thank you for your passion and the power of your delivery and the amazing content that is coming and everything that's been prepared. And you've been working on this for quite some time to pull together. So um, you've done an amazing job, and I can't wait to be there and to also say that anyone that is interested in this opportunity, it is also an opportunity for you to be aware of not only the Sustainable Living and Tiny Home Expo that we've talked about here, but also the Hub for Humankind opportunity, which is a summit the following month. So the community connections that are started at this event and that we've already got happening through our connections to be able to actually come together and then bring these insights into presentations. And we've got 4 camps based off of the Wheel of Life to be able to cover all of the areas of life in a holistic way, like Sarah Jane said about permaculture, which is the structure of culture generally. So I just wanted to put it out to anyone who's watching the replay, as I know that everyone here is already connected to the Hub for Humankind already and hopefully getting involved. Very much looking forward to having you involved with this opportunity, and everything for that is here because it was created because what does humanity need, and how does it survive, how do we survive these times. So that was kind of what inspired the Hub for Humankind in the first place, and it's going to be an incredibly powerful experience, so we'd love to have you part of that as well. um, and so I just wanted to share that, and I do see we have a thank you in the comments. So perfect. We are just over beyond the time that we had scheduled for the call. So I want to respect everyone's time. And is there any final questions or comments, input that you'd like to share today before we close off?
Just some immense gratitude. Lovely to see your faces. Thank you for sharing this knowledge with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Megan.
Showing up as well, Megan.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys are complete as well, then we'll just simply say, Sarah Jane, thank you very much for all of what you shared and offered today. And to everyone watching this replay, if you don't get yourself in the room, you don't get to meet the people that can really help you boom. So let's get not on a Zoom, but in person for once. Woohoo!
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night. Mwah.